All right, John, we're recording again after a little technical glitch. Good
Hey there,
to
Daniel. Hey there,
get
Lauren. Nice to meet you.
you too. So, Lauren, fire away, please, with the first question.
What is or slash what is or was your job?
Yeah. I worked at Mastercard for the last 10 years until April of this year. Now I'm working on Bitcoin related stuff. Um, I worked in product management, where I'm kind of the intersection between the business side of the organization and the development side of the organization. So my role is to really deeply understand our customers and their business needs and the business opportunities available to us, and then prioritize those opportunities, and then sort of translate a lot of those business requirements into product requirements that can help guide the development team, our engineering team, to build these solutions. And our products were very much around loyalty, so merchant loyalty, where, as you imagine, Mastercard has significant number of relationships between large merchants, and they're interested in driving loyalty, driving spend behavior, like higher frequency of spend, higher retention, less churn, new customer acquisition. And Mastercard is able to help with all of those things because we have the transaction history of all of the cardholders from our banking customers. And with that, we're able to drive offers or discounts from those merchants to cardholders through our banking partners. Um, so it's a very interesting way. Like, you can think of it as like a marketing solution, really, or a loyalty solution to drive to meet the business needs of both our banks and the merchants. Hopefully that explains a bit.
So, would
It's a complex
loyalty,
solution.
yeah, would loyalty include things like cash back on purchases, all of these kind of
Absolutely.
schemes?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, essentially, absolutely it's cash back, and it's what the term we would use is redemption or statement credit. So when you make what we call a qualifying spend at a merchant, to get, say, a 10% discount or get $10 off, you would see that show up as a statement credit about 2 or 3 days later on your bank statement. And there's programs that are also run using air miles or points as well. So it's either cash back or air miles or points.
Right. Okay. Do you understand how air miles work, Lauren?
Don't know what they are.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
ask John.
Uh, yeah, sure.
Well,
Well, it's really like when you have a credit card or a debit card or a relationship with your bank, um, when you spend, you are incentivized to spend because you get a certain benefit, and that benefit is some kind of points or air miles. And in the case of air miles, as you accumulate air miles, with your spend behavior, you might get, say, 1 air mile for every dollar spent. But on certain purchases with certain partnered merchants, you might get 10 air miles for the same dollar spent, or 50 air miles for the same dollar spent. But the idea then is that you accumulate air miles and then you can use them for travel. So instead then of spending cash to buy a plane ticket from, say, London to Paris, you can use your air miles, and that way you're sort of, you feel like you're saving money. You feel like you have a kind of a deal. So that's it in a nutshell. But what I work on is going a little bit beyond that, where instead of just getting 1 air mile for your typical spend when you go to the grocery store or the gas station or the chemist, we would send you offers for particular merchants to make a particular qualifying spend, like, say, $50 at Macy's or $50 at Bloomingdale's, whatever, and then you might get $10 back, get a very material discount, or get like 5,000 air miles, or get a very large amount of air miles. Hopefully that explains a bit.
all right. Yeah, perfect. Do you have any further questions?
I don't think so. No, I don't. I don't think I do.
Okay. All right.
All
Well,
right.
thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thanks. It's nice to meet you, Lauren.
Yeah, that's me too. Bye.
Bye bye.
So, well, just to clue the listeners into how we got chatting, you DM'd me on Twitter. I think after listening to, was it the Musket episode with David Parkinson and the other guys there, the point of sale system that they've designed in the UK?
It was an earlier episode, but actually, I did listen to that episode later, and I think you were very kind enough to connect me to that company, and I met with the CEO as well to talk a little bit more. So, yeah, because I'm certainly based on my experience and expertise, I'm very interested, and of course, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist class of 2017. So I've been very interested and focused extracurricularly on Bitcoin for the last several years, but working at Mastercard, which has been a very interesting sort of comparison with that culture and so forth. I definitely see so many opportunities for Bitcoin, really for competitive advantage, using Bitcoin for competitive advantage, particularly for merchants.
Right. Okay. Very interesting. So I want to go back to then. First of all, the plebs listening, that they're all, we're all we all have a good rabbit hole story. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
So
Sure.
you say class of 2017 was where all the stats started dropping for you.
Yeah.
What you know what happened? Why? How? Who?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if I have a good rabbit hole or orange pilling story. I think I'm one of these people, like many of us. I think there's this thread on Twitter now and again where um, many of us in Bitcoin, we have to get sort of tapped on the shoulder about 3 times before we really start to pay attention to Bitcoin. So I'm certainly not one of these people who uh, once I like that very first tap on the shoulder that I suddenly got interested. In fact, I think that first tap probably goes back to around 2013, where um, because I live in the San Francisco Bay Area and like technology is a little bit more forward here, there's actually a local coffee shop that was accepting Bitcoin as far back as that. And I was there with my friend Nick, and he pointed out like oh they take Bitcoin here, and I remember kind of raising my eyes, thinking oh that's like monopoly money or nonsense, or I didn't really pay very much attention to it. But of course, I just hadn't studied it. So but I think around early 2017, in fairness, it was probably just seeing it in the news and that I've seen that the price had gone up and it was more out there. I think though that I'm like all of us in Bitcoin, I think what we share is that we have an intellectual curiosity. So once I saw Bitcoin going up and I started to hear about crypto and unfortunately I started to study it more and I realized just how interesting it was. And of course, it's a rabbit hole that once you start going down, you just keep going hours and hours later. So I think I started to get conviction then within probably around April or so in 2017, after maybe about 10 hours of reading about it, in particular the concepts of scarcity, absolute scarcity, and I think in the context of in like relatively large in inflation at the time. So I started to buy a little bit of Bitcoin. And I think once you make that first purchase, you even get more interested in it because you have more skin in the game, which I think is important to really make sure you understand what you have and why you have it.
Yeah. Okay. So you're in like I was. I mean, but I'd left my job. I used to work in fiat currency land with foreign exchange. But I'd left my job before. I cannot imagine falling down the rabbit hole and sitting at that desk. Like it would have torn me in two. Probably why I
Yeah.
just denied its existence for so long after hearing about it the first few times. But what was it like being, getting orange pilled, falling down the rabbit hole, probably getting home from work as soon as you could to rip into the next article or the next book or find the next Andreas Antonopoulos video that you haven't found yet. Like, you know what it's like when you're going through that. You insulate
Yeah.
yourself. You don't even want to hang with normies at lunchtime. You want to just go
Sure.
and scooch off and do your own thing and, you know,
Yeah.
download all that knowledge. What was that like?
Yeah. I think for me, maybe so certainly one of the fruitful exercises I experienced is bouncing my newfound ideas and understandings off some of my closer friends to see what their reaction was. And I think what's very interesting about doing that sort of thing is that you really only understand something when you can teach it to someone else. So I think going through those sort of exercises made it very clear, like, oh, I actually I can't explain that certain thing very well, so I need to study it more to get to the point where I feel like a teacher. So I think those sort of exercises were very useful, and I think one of the outcomes of that is I do have a handful of friends who I orange pilled, at least two or three of them very deeply. Um, so I think that was some success. Um, I think also like being at Mastercard was quite interesting because one of the ways I like to think about these things is like, hey, how can I be more successful at work with this new knowledge? Like, are there opportunities for me to take this and help the company be more successful? But I think there really wasn't any opportunities because most of the opportunities in a lot of the legacy companies, it's a bit to the extent that they're doing anything in this area, it's a little bit more crypto related and not Bitcoin specific. So really not none of those kind of opportunities resonated with me. And that's one of the reasons I think I'm now sort of trying to focus, like left Mastercard and trying to focus on some of these things full time. And I think you may know this, but I'm now partnered a little bit with Satsback, which is a company in the reward space. So I'm helping Tom, the CEO there, craft some strategies, and I think we have a lot of very interesting opportunities, very large opportunities. So I'll see if we can sort of bring those to fruition.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that. Like, what did you? How was? Have you resigned from Mastercard because you just want to get into a Bitcoin company, or was there something else going on?
Yeah, yeah, I think like it's very difficult to really focus full time on Mastercard where you're still working on at another company. So in fact, I mean, I likely wouldn't be able to be talking to you now as on a podcast if I were still at Mastercard because I would have to, frame my answers in the context of like where I'm working and the potential. Bitcoin is essentially competing with the legacy financial systems as well. So and this is my second podcast. And I'm also writing in Substack about some of my ideas around driving competitive advantage in Bitcoin. Those are also articles that, I likely, it's very likely I wouldn't be able to be writing them if I were still working full time at Mastercard. So yeah, it's very much an opportunity to take my knowledge and expertise and really look through the Bitcoin lens on sort of making a lot of these opportunities happen.
Yes, and this is what I'm hoping is going to happen over the next 9 months or so. When we do get into that bull run, I'm just wondering how many plebs, listening to this or around the world, are on the verge of making that decision that you've made, but just didn't
Yeah,
quite have, not brave enough, for want of a better
yeah,
word. Uh,
yeah.
but a good old fashioned Bitcoin pump will probably release these
It's
people
true.
with the skill sets that they've sharpened over like a fiat career. I mean,
Absolutely.
how many years
That's
you were 10 years at Mastercard? What were you doing before
yeah.
that?
Yeah, I was actually at Yahoo for 9 years.
Wow.
So I was a product manager on the Yahoo front page and my Yahoo, and I worked on a lot of our partner portal implementations. Like you might maybe be familiar with British Telecom, where if you were a British Telecom user and you signed up and they bring you to a kind of a homepage, it would actually be a my Yahoo version of that homepage. So British Telecom branding, Yahoo branding, and a lot of news and sports and entertainment and that. And so we kind of monetized that as well. So yeah, that was very interesting experience. So I have both of the sort of the consumer side experience, but also some of the financial services experience as well. And actually, prior to that, maybe similar to your background a little bit, because I think you worked on Forex and maybe Hong Kong or something. I worked at Wall Street. I was a credit analyst in fixed income corporate bonds for Bankers Trust, which was bought by Deutsche Bank. So I was on the trading floor there. Wasn't really a good fit for me though. So I managed to go to business school at Kellogg Northwestern University, which really allowed me to do more of the technology related stuff. Yeah, like you touched on, I think for people in the Bitcoin space now, I think what I found very encouraging, and I would encourage other Bitcoiners, is that to really think about your experience and expertise in your current domain and think of it in the context of Bitcoin. And what I found is that there are massive opportunities in Bitcoin, in particular around medium of exchange, to drive significant new value propositions and new success for Bitcoin for businesses with Bitcoin. that I don't see out there in the wild. So, but that's not the case for everybody. I mean, it really depends on your job. Like if you're an architect or something, maybe there's not like like some Bitcoin related opportunity out there. But for many of us, I would encourage Bitcoin plebs to think about that.
Yeah, for sure. And architects are going to be in very high demand because
Sure. Well, yeah, sure.
Bitcoiners are going to want to build their citadels, right? So,
That's true.
resigning, that's usually a hard thing to do. And again, it keeps people painted into a corner because they don't want to go in and have that conversation. How did you handle that, or was that easy for you?
It was kind of relatively straightforward because I've been there for 10 years, and I think even people in the team knew that I'd sort of I was always thinking about Bitcoin related stuff and dabbling in Bitcoin related stuff. And I did write one sort of related article on Bitcoin. But yeah, I think especially in the Bay Area, I think most people, I would say the average tenure at a company is probably more like sort of 2 years kind of thing in the San Francisco Bay Area in technology. So even the fact of staying at 10 years at Mastercard was a very long time. And I think when you're 10 years in a role as well, you've also gone through a lot of the learning that you would do, and you're not necessarily doing a lot of incremental learning. But also it's a very nice company to work at, like in that there's a very good culture there. It's a very sort of, the word I would use is respectful culture, and very collegial. And I think the work was quite intellectually stimulating as well. So even though I'd been there 10 years and gone through my full learning, um, I think what I'm working on now, well, the kind of things I'm hoping to work on now or putting a lot of time into and working with Sats back on are very, very large opportunities, I think. And that definitely makes me very excited and very motivated. And I think it's a very good use of my time. And I think my goal is to kind of look back in 2 years and say, yeah, that was a really great development for me to be able to do that versus sort of stay working in traditional financial services.
Awesome. Well, I was hanging out with Tom a little bit in Prague, and been a big
Wow, right.
proponent of Satsback from the very minute that they even launched, because Tom and I had we'd already connected pre him launching, and it's been great to see it grow. And he's got so many great ideas; they don't stop firing in his mind. So now it's nice to know as well that he's got a seasoned professional like yourself that he can get on the phone to and chew over ideas. But
Yeah.
what are the other ideas then that you've been writing about and that you want to bring to the table? Where do
Sure.
you see like this space, ideally in your ideal kind of mind's eye,
Yeah,
evolving?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, so I write in Substack right now, and my name on Twitter is Last Coin Standing. I do have maybe about 6,000 followers or so. So I've been writing about Bitcoin for a while. Um, the biggest opportunities, like what I'm focused on, is that concept of competitive advantage through Bitcoin. And using my expertise and experience of the last 10 years working in the loyalty space, working on merchant offers, the biggest kind of a challenge, both a challenge and an opportunity that I see is that if you look at the landscape of Bitcoin right now in the concept of medium of exchange, it's really not really used very, very much for medium of exchange. Like you'll see certain comments on Twitter in like Bitcoin Jungle or maybe El Salvador where a handful of people are using it and they're showing those little videos and that, and it's great and it's fun. But when you look, if you really think about this as a two-sided market and you think of it first from the merchant's point of view, there is a long list of significant advantages for merchants opening up a Bitcoin channel and growing that channel. And at a high level, those advantages are things like, well, there's zero credit card fee, and in many cases that's 3% or more in the developing world. There's no risk of chargebacks or fraud. There's immediate settlement in real time. Um, and when it's used instead of cash, it reduces or eliminates risk of cash skimming. and it's more secure as well. Like, so say for certain verticals, like say marijuana dispensaries or something, they're dealing typically with a significant amount of cash. So moving it to Bitcoin rails sort of reduces security. There's a long list of advantages, and also most importantly, it's an opportunity for merchants to attract the Bitcoiner segment, who is a very valuable segment. They typically skew affluent, intelligent, intellectually curious, but also very influential in their social groups, and are also very social. So so there is a significant advantage for merchants to consider Bitcoin, accepting Bitcoin. The problem is that there's very little incentive for consumers to use Bitcoin. People like you and I who are Bitcoiners, we typically focus on hodling. We're interested in increasing our stash and not spending our stash. And there's also, in most jurisdictions, there are taxable events associated with spending Bitcoin. So there's really no incentive, and in fact, there's typically disincentives for spending Bitcoin. So you, given that it's a two-sided market, even though there's benefits to merchants, right, there's just not enough of a catalyst to drive the flywheel of Bitcoin medium of exchange in the current framework which we see out there. The opportunity I see, and I'm working, I'm thinking through, and also like advising Satsback, is the opportunity for to really drive that flywheel with merchant loyalty, with merchant offers, Bitcoin native offers. So that's a key opportunity that we're looking at. But also, it's worth noting that there are interesting markets out there that do not have capital gains tax on Bitcoin. So there's certain beachhead market opportunities to grow that. So the upshot that I see is that in certain markets, the opportunity to drive Bitcoin spend behavior and actually end up with a scenario where we're encouraging not just Bitcoiners to spend, but we're also onboarding no coiners, or people who don't have any Bitcoin, because we're creating an environment where they can get significant discounts that they can't get in the fiat world. So that's sort of it at a high level. What I'll say as well is that one other way to look at it is that when you think of the kind of work that I've done over the last 10 years, and we have companies like, say, Cardlytics or Mastercard, Visa, and a lot of these players in the loyalty space, they have very healthy businesses driving consumer spend behavior to participating merchants in these offers programs or loyalty programs. But they're doing all of that on, like, typically credit card expensive rails. So you're doing all that on a high cost payments channel. And the opportunity I see is to do a lot of those similar behaviors, but on the Bitcoin channel, which is a low cost channel with significant benefits. So I'll just kind of pause there, but those are the kind of opportunities which I see.
Right. Okay. So what what can you share with us? What other companies? Obviously, Musket. You've spoken to them. What other companies have you kind of pinpointed as a company you might be able to help or have already collaborated with? For example, over here, I'm thinking Bitrefill, because Bitrefill, you can purchase vouchers, or they even have now their own Visa card where you can sign up for their Visa, you can deposit some Bitcoin, and voila, you can just go away and spend. And in the back end, they're doing all the conversion. Obviously, there's fees involved, and exchange rates and everything else that the discerning pleb needs to take into consideration. But that's just one company that's sprung to mind.
Yeah.
Because like many other Bitcoiners, I'm being forced into this corner where I need to realize what I've stacked. It needs to be a part of my daily spend, because you run out of fiat.
Yeah, I think there's a few companies in the space. I mean, Bitrefill is one. There's also, I talked to the CEO or the co-founder of Jolts Rewards, and there's also Oshi as well as another one. I think though, because I have a kind of a good, firm, strong relationship with Tom at Satsback, I'll probably be devoting most of my attention there, if not all of my attention, really I mean, certainly where I want to be in about, say, 4 months' time to 6 months' time is to be working full time with them, hopefully with Satsback, or it's possible I'll join another Bitcoin related company. There's also companies like even like Zaprite and Lightspark and that who are doing a lot of interesting things in the space. Um, I think what I'm most interested in, and of course, there's companies like Lolly as well. What I'm most interested in is that there are certain companies in the space where their philosophy, I think, is meeting customers where they are. Is this phrase I've heard a lot. So companies like, say, Lolly, just as an example, they focus on fiat offers, really, where I can go and I can make it's really linking my credit card, like so doing card linked offers where I put in my credit card number into the app. So it's registered with the app, and then I go and I make a spend at McDonald's or Starbucks. And if I activate the offer, then a day or two later, I get the equivalent Bitcoin value of, say, 25 cents back from my spend at McDonald's. They used to have bigger offers at Costco, which were much more meaningful. But what I'm much more interested in is not so much just I think the level of innovation there is somewhat limited. And it's similar in some ways to what Satsback has been doing historically as well. It's meeting customers where they are, and the innovation really is just providing Bitcoin denominated rewards as opposed to fiat denominated rewards. What I'm very interested in is Bitcoin native offers. We're actually driving Bitcoin as medium of exchange and giving incentives for people to use Bitcoin, and really incentives for users to acquire Bitcoin for the first time, even for normies to go out. What I want to work on is give normies a new reason to acquire Bitcoin, not just to acquire it as a something to hold, to save, but to actually take advantage of offers and discounts out there that are otherwise unavailable with fiat. And my goal is to attract merchants to this kind of value proposition, because the economic surplus achieved with Bitcoin payment rails is significantly higher than with payment rails. So it's very much around building merchants' Bitcoin strategy. What I'd like to see in about 5 years is a significant number, a significant percentage of merchants in most verticals having a Bitcoin strategy, and I want to help build that strategy.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, what's a general example? Let's say somebody wants a new television. Well, we're in normie land, right? Generally, something like that. People still will probably go to a store to do some kind of research rather than just blindly order one off the internet. So they walk in and they see two prices on the sticker. It's $1,000 if you pay with your credit card or with check or with cash, or it's $850 if you pay with Bitcoin.
Okay. Yeah. So that's an interesting scenario that you outlined there, and it's worth discussing. So I think there's an opportunity. There's sort of two levels of opportunity here to discuss. And the first level is what you described, where there's an opportunity for the merchant to give what I would call a blanket discount for using Bitcoin. But one of the problems with that is that that price is then visible to everybody. So it's you have to pay that discount as a merchant. You have to pay that discount for everybody who uses it. What I'm more interested in is offers that are delivered to the to deliver to the consumer to actually help promote that behavior. So, for example, like say my local TV store has that offer for 15% off, say whatever it is. I'm typically not aware of that offer. Like I don't know what sales Macy's is running right now. I don't know what sales Bloomingdale's is running, and I don't really typically read that stuff. Like so they may very well be running sales, but Macy's is not really pulling me to the store because they don't have a relationship with me. They don't have that connection. The opportunity that I want to work on, and that I have been working on at when I was working at Mastercard, is to really create a offers network where say it's with Satsback. So I have a Satsback app, and Satsback will let me know, like, hey, there's a 15% discount or a 20% discount going on at Macy's. So this company, in this case, Satsback, would be playing an invaluable role in driving that spend behavior, in generating demand. So the merchant standpoint, what they're getting is they're getting that demand generation. We're driving Bitcoiners to their store, especially when you think of the offers network, and especially actually, and this is another important point in the context of Bitcoin. I think many of us we're very motivated. We have an interest in Bitcoin succeeding. We have an ideological interest in Bitcoin succeeding. And that is something that very few sort of shopper segments have, really. So just as an example, if you can imagine your local grocery store, say you shop at 4 grocery stores and you shift your spend, like you get eggs and milk at one, but you get like meat at another, and so forth. And many of us have that kind of behavior. We don't just shop at one grocery store. But imagine one of those grocery stores raise their hand and say, hey, we are now Bitcoiner friendly and we want to attract Bitcoiners. And then there's this app, like say in this case, Satsback, that has the army of Bitcoiners who are signed up for that app. And we let them know that, hey, this grocery store is now giving a 10% offer. I imagine what's going to happen is that people like you and I will likely shift a significant amount of our share of wallet to that grocery store. We're motivated, and we almost don't even care like whether it's a slightly lower price or slightly higher price. It's just that sense of like, wow, these guys are motivated. But the advantage of doing it instead of just a blanket discount, like everything is 2% off, by having offers, it gives the merchant significant control over how much discount they want to give, when they want to give it. Like for supposing Monday is a slow day, they can just set it up in the experience so that like, hey, the 2% discount only applies on Mondays, or it only applies like say happy hour between the hours of like 3 and 4, or I only want to give 50 discounts. I want to give $10 off this thing, or 10% off this particular thing, but I only want to do it for the first 50 people who want to take advantage of it, Bitcoiners. So these offers give a tremendous control over the merchant's marketing budget, if you will. That's a good way to think about it, is that every merchant has a marketing budget. And my goal, and I think my expectation, is that the opportunity is to make this Bitcoin channel the best way, the highest return on advertising spend that they can make. And I hope to shift a lot of those marketing dollars to the Bitcoin marketing channel.
And it's crazy, right? If you think about marketing budget, all they have to do is say, we accept Bitcoin. And that probably hit the front page of every other, like, if a big, if a Macy's, for example, said,
sure, absolutely.
That would be all over. Like, that would be the most incredible marketing gimmick they could ever imagine. And it's free.
Well, I think, and just to kind of like unpack that point a little bit, I think there's certainly a bit of a PR value in saying, yes, we accept Bitcoin. But a very important point, if I think if your audience is going to walk away with it with a single point, it's this one, is that Bitcoin acceptance is not enough. There has to be an incentive for people to also use Bitcoin, especially in environments like in the UK, where spending Bitcoin is a taxable event. And people like you and I are typically interested in, accumulating more Bitcoin. The real sort of nirvana dream that I'm one of the use cases I'm working on is that you have a kind of a strike like wallet where you put $100 in, you put fiat in, and then you go to the merchant and you take advantage of the Bitcoin native offer. Say it's Tesco, and you get like say 5% back. And then, so you took advantage of a discount that is only available with Bitcoin channels, and you actually end up with more Bitcoin than you did before. It's a kind of a spend and replace strategy. So there's a lot of wonderful opportunities like that. But I think the important point is that Bitcoin acceptance is not enough. For me, the success would be a year later, Sainsbury's or Tesco's turning around and say, hey, we've actually grown our Bitcoin native channel from like 0.5% to 2%. and that channel is a low cost channel. And those customers and we also attracted a new group of customers. So I think there's significant first mover advantage in a lot of these opportunities as well. And based on the experience I have at Mastercard, I'm very clued into the verticals that are most important. Like when you think of an offers network, it's not a case of getting a long tail of merchants. It's not so much about signing up all the mom and pop shops and the coffee shops. Those can be important to get significant breadth, but there are key verticals that I would want to bring on to the SATSBACs, in this case, offers network, to make it to get that critical mass and escape velocity, so that because you really need to solve for both sides of the network as well, so that you as a consumer, you as a Bitcoiner, when you sign into SATSBAC or you see the app, that there's a robust set of merchants and offers, so that you're engaged with the app, and it's really solving a lot of your spend problems, not just a random problem, but a lot of the spend problems.
How many of these conversations have you had with your ex-colleagues, or perhaps in your network, those that work at Visa, for example?
Yeah, I would say that I mean, with close friends at work, I've had these conversations. I think there's two or three points to make. I mean, one is that the vast majority of people, not just at Mastercard, but I'm sure at most legacy or most traditional financial institutions, they don't understand Bitcoin, and they don't have an appreciation for Bitcoin. So I think foundationally that's the challenge. But I think more specifically, when I think of companies, and like I said, not just Mastercard, but in the traditional financial space, there are two or three problems that prevent them from moving forward with any Bitcoin related solution. The first is that the whole tech stack of these companies is completely geared towards fiat related transactions and fiat flows, and it's very antiquated, and it's like there's a lot of string and tape, is holding it together. To be quite frank, there's a lot of it's just a lot of challenges with that. But it's totally geared towards fiat denominated rails. The second point is that anything that a lot of these companies do in the Bitcoin space, it really cannibalizes their fiat related business, because Bitcoin is very much a parallel system. I think for a lot of these companies, it's hard to have a Bitcoin strategy that is supplemental to their core business. There's this business term, actually. There's a very good book I recommend called the Seven Powers, and it's about these business powers, and one of them, an important one, is called counter positioning. And what I love about Bitcoin related businesses is that it's virtually impossible for these legacy traditional financial companies to respond, because Bitcoin is on parallel rails. It cannibalizes their current business. Most of them will not take an action. I think companies in this space, they often take a superficial action, I would say. So just as an example, some of these companies like, say, Visa or Mastercard, when you get your rewards, and there are circumstances where you can choose whether to get cash back or air miles. There are circumstances where you can choose to get, say, crypto. So it's a kind of an incremental way, but I think I definitely see measures like that more as half measures, and not really moving the needle and delivering a massive value proposition. But the third reason I think also that these companies it's difficult for them to act is that most of them do not have a Bitcoin ethos in their company. They have very few people who understand Bitcoin. You'd almost have to carve out a very small division that tries to attract Bitcoiners and only hire Bitcoiners and so forth. And that's a strategic undertaking that a lot of the companies just won't bother doing. It's not going to be a high enough priority for them to try to do. So it's one of the things that's very encouraging about this space. And in fact, one of the parallels I really think is very interesting is when I think back to the advent of the internet. And for me, you can argue when the internet really started, whether it's say 94 or 96 or 98, whatever. But I remember being in business school and from between 98 and 2000, and there was a massive, it suddenly became very important to companies. Companies recognized that the internet was going to be very important, but in particular, e-commerce. So you had all of these companies scrambling to pull together their e-commerce strategy, and they didn't know what to do. They didn't know what it was, but they knew that they needed one. And I think it's an important parallel to Bitcoin now, where I don't think that time is right this minute, but I think it's coming. It's coming very soon, and I hope to work on it, trying to make it happen. Where companies are asking that question, what is our Bitcoin strategy? We need a Bitcoin strategy. We don't really know what it is, but we kind of know we need one. So that's what I want to work on, is helping companies achieve competitive advantage through Bitcoin.
Yeah, interesting. And counter positioning, you said, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, for a lot of these businesses, the only way to counter position yourself against it is to start stacking Bitcoin onto your balance sheet, which is the game theory beautifully, playing
Absolutely.
out. And a
Absolutely.
company like Mastercard or Visa, hurry the fuck up, guys. Otherwise, it's going to be all over in 10 years' time. I mean, that's step number one, surely. Just stack some
Yeah.
Bitcoin to give yourselves a longer runway.
Yeah, that's one of the things. So I think a lot of discussion has been happening about Bitcoin as treasury reserve asset. And I think obviously MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor have led the way there. And I think I love the idea of him really putting together a playbook of what to do, how to do it, and so forth. I'm almost surprised more companies haven't done that yet. We're starting to see a few companies do it. I forget the names of them in the last month, but I think there's a Japanese company, and already I think their stock shot up 30% after they announced that. So I think there's a kind of that sort of um, there is a strategy there for me. um, I think one of the interesting opportunities, again, coming back, because I don't have anything particularly unique to offer as it relates to the Treasury reserve asset strategy. Because of my background and experience, I'm focused a little bit more on the operational side, which I think is the sort of second part, is like, hey, for companies that are earning money, that are from their customers, and in particular merchants, with my background, how can that be a component of the strategy? But like you say, I think the opportunity is that it's one of the inflows of Bitcoin, rather than the company having to go out and explicitly, sign up with an exchange and transfer their cash reserves from their balance sheet to Bitcoin reserves. That's certainly one strategy, and I think it's all companies should be doing that. But what I find is an interesting opportunity, a related strategy, is earning Bitcoin from their customers by opening up the Bitcoin payments channel, and then just having that sit on their balance sheet. So say they're for the first year, 1% of their revenue is coming through the Bitcoin channel, then that can just sit on the balance sheet. And one of the benefits of that is that at least then the company is not taking it doesn't have to announce that, like, hey, we are now moving our Bitcoin, as we're now treating Bitcoin as a treasury reserve asset. They can say, like, hey, we're just earning Bitcoin and we're just leaving it there. So it's a kind of a different approach that may appeal to some companies that say, hey, we're just responding to the market. We've obviously opened up our Bitcoin channel because there is a demand for it, and it's starting to become more of an interesting payments channel. um, but we're just accumulating Bitcoin from our operational channel then. So it's another related strategy.
Yeah, 100%. And it's gradually then suddenly, as we know, just yesterday in the UK, Standard Chartered announced that they are setting up a spot Bitcoin trading desk. So this is the first bank that
Nice.
is making a move in that direction. These headlines that, they make ripples, and you would know, being the Bitcoiner that was trapped inside Mastercard, that you were probably the crazy in the room. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So think about like how that's shifting as well, because if you bought Bitcoin up around the board table 5 years ago, that carried a hell of a lot of career risk. Now,
Yeah.
if you don't have an answer for when the big man turns around and says, "What's our Bitcoin strategy?" That's a career risk. So you better
Absolutely,
get,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. One of the wonderful opportunities that I see with Bitcoin, it's very much again, it's like that parallel to the internet time, to the e-commerce strategy. You can come up with a playbook. Like I hope to work with Sats back on this playbook for what is that Bitcoin strategy, and that strategy then can then be used by many companies. It's not like every company needs a unique Bitcoin strategy. Like when you think of like say when you think of companies in different verticals, right now their business strategy may be quite different. They have different business strategies. They're trying to go after different segments. But in the context of Bitcoin, what's wonderful about the opportunity here is that it can be, I'm hoping it can be very scalable. Like once we come up with the playbook for a particular vertical, that very same playbook can be applied to be successful with Bitcoin in other verticals. So I'm hugely successful. I'm hugely optimistic and enthusiastic about that.
Mate, it's a very interesting space to be over the next few years. And well, well done to you. Congratulations for taking that step forward. You know, it's a huge thing to throw in a career, especially one that you've been, you know, ensconced with for 10 years, and to stick your neck out and say, no, I'm going to work on what I think is important, and that is Bitcoin and that is payments. That's mega. So well done. Appreciate everything that you're doing. And, you know, we've got you on our side. I'm really looking forward to what's going to unravel. Uh, I want to finish off with, you know, asking the last question. And that is always the same. If you had one last orange pill, who would you give it to and why?
Okay. Can I give two answers?
Yes, you've come prepared, I
Okay.
see.
So my first orange pill might be Michael Saylor. And the
Uh-huh.
reason I mention that, I know that sounds crazy
I
because he's
think I know
arguably
where you're
more
going.
orange pill than anyone else. Yeah. The orange pill would be around a renewed or a refreshed thinking around Bitcoin as medium of exchange, because I think he has been much more focused on Bitcoin as digital gold, as a treasury reserve asset. And I think there is a long list of very good reasons for that. But I think I know his motivations for not focusing on medium of exchange, because it potentially competes with the US dollar and so forth, and it gets into those sort of conversations. But I think one can make the argument that it's better to be upfront and frank now, rather than sort of like surreptitiously wait another 5 years until focusing on medium of exchange, because there are like focusing on Bitcoin as medium of exchange is not just some gimmick. It's actually driving cost reductions. It's actually driving competitive advantage. So I think we should be much more enthusiastic about explaining to companies just how more successful they can be by accepting Bitcoin, and it drives costs out of the market. It's a win-win-win for everybody. So I do think I would like to see Michael sort of examine the opportunity for Bitcoin as medium of exchange. The second orange pill I'd have is probably for the Pope. I don't know if someone has said that before, but I'm not religious, and I'm not necessarily a huge fan of the Pope, but he has a massive following, and one of the opportunities we don't talk about it sufficiently maybe is the opportunity for the poorest people in society. I'm sure the Pope cares about the poor, and we know that out of the 8 billion people in the world, there are between 2 and 4 billion that are either unbanked or underbanked. And I think Bitcoin brings a level playing field for everybody. So we should all want that level playing field. And the only people who don't want that playing field would be sort of gatekeepers or monopolists, or the sort of fiat maximalist kind of thing. And so yeah, I think the Pope would be my other orange pill.
Yeah, love it. And interesting your thoughts on Michael Saylor. Hopefully he'll be on the phone. You know, you could get yourself a consultancy gig. But it would make sense to
That would
me,
be wonderful.
just for that one company in mind, it would make sense to me that goodness knows how many clients they have selling their business analytics software into goodness knows how many, like it could be in the thousands of companies, let's say.
Yep.
And we know full well that a certain amount of that dollar income gets converted into Bitcoin each month. Well, why not just charge the guys in Bitcoin and incentivize them with like a 1 to 2%, discount, because you're going to be paying that to make the fees on the exchange in the first place, and you can just get direct Bitcoin straight into the balance sheet. But hey, look, I've never run a business, and I would never overstep my my kind of remit there. But
Yeah,
there is a case for medium of exchange straight onto the balance sheet and cut out the middleman, which kind of makes sense.
There is, yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, John, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate you giving up the time and reaching out. How can people get a hold of you if they're interested in working a little bit closer, or follow you on Substack? Obviously, at Last Coin Standing on Twitter. We'll have that in the show notes. Is there anything else that you want to leave the plebs with?
No, I think no. Thanks for the conversation, Daniel. This has been a lot of fun. I think you covered it there. Yeah, just definitely reach out to me on Last Coin Standing on Twitter, and my Substack, as you said, substack.lastcoinstanding.com. And I expect to have a few more articles published shortly. So definitely feel free to follow there to understand the opportunities around competitive advantage for Bitcoin, because that's very much what I'm focused on, and I see huge opportunity, and I'm really excited to work more and more on this.
Have you got any slides or anything? Have you presented at conferences before? This sounds like the kind of thing that would be a perfect kind of 20-minute like presentation.
Yeah, I have about 80 to 100 slides on this. But they're more internal though, and really I've been more work I've been doing helping SatsBack think through potential strategies. So and I think with that as well, I mean, we're interested in getting a next round of funding. I mean, I see absolutely enormous opportunities that we're keen to work on. So we're certainly interested in some VCs taking a look at the opportunities which we're working on. That's definitely a big opportunity. There's certainly some slides I could probably present at conference. I would say that most of them, though, are more internal strategy, and I probably wouldn't want to publish them because I think we have a lot of secret sauce sort of opportunities that I probably keep a little closer to my chest right now.
All right. Good to know. Well, any conference organizers out there, get in touch with John. It sounds like an interesting talk to be showcased on the main stage somewhere.
That'd be great. Awesome.
All right, man. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Daniel, so much.
Have a good day.
Appreciate it, Daniel. Take care. Have a good one. Cheers.